Hi folks, and welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. So the fly you see in the vise was, well, it was a bit of a joke really. What I wanted this video to be about was techniques and proportions, but I thought I'd tie this my own warped sense of humour. But now that I've tied it, I actually quite like it. I think it might do a job, you know, as a top dropper fly. It could bring fish into your casts, and you know, they take orange blobs. Why wouldn't they take an orange nymph? So I'm going to show you how I've put it together, but as I said, this is more about techniques and proportions. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise is a Hanak H230 barbless hook. This one's at size 8, it's on a medium wire and it's finished in black nickel. Now sadly I am out of super glue, so I'm going to add some wax to my tying thread. And what I'm using here is 50 denier nano silk from Troutline. It's the sumo thread, and I'm going to catch that in. Now this is not ideal. I would always generally place some super glue on the shank of the hook just to stop body rotation, but for the purposes of demonstration, just imagine I've done that. Now, one of the most important things in fly tying, and that's what this video really is about today, is proportions. You can pretty much get everything else wrong, but if you've got the proportions correct, the fly will still look half decent. So, first thing I'm going to do is add the tailing fibres to the fly. And what I'm going to be using is some dyed mallard. It's been dyed orange, as you can see. In fact, nearly everything about this fly is orange, and this was a kind of, you know, a bit of a joke really. So what I want is the length of the shank of the hook, but then once I tied it, I was looking at the fly and thinking, well, actually, I quite like the look of that, and I might well tie a few more just to see if they'll do a trick for me. Probably fished on either the point or the top dropper. Fishing a team of nymphs. I think this would be bringing fish from all over. So the next thing then, I've got some orange flexi floss here. I'll just take a little bit off the spool, and what I want to do is catch that in just well back to the eye. Don't come too close to the eye, because we're going to need that room for our thorax. Now, as I was saying about proportions, if you can just sort your proportions out, your fly tying will improve exponentially overnight if you get the proportions right. And if you don't be afraid to strip that hook out or go back a few stages just to get that right, and it will help you no end. So the body of the fly, I'm going to be using some Opal Mirage. I'll just get a bit off the spool, and then I can lay that up alongside. Now I've started with this 30 denier nano silk, and I'm having just a wee bit of trouble getting that to sit in for me because it's nice and thin. Look how thin the body is currently. I'm going to lift that back because it just needs to go back another millimetre or so. There's nothing worse than when you're tying that when you lift up your materials you've got like a gap, and I can still see a tiny little gap there. You might be able to see it, but I'm confident I can hide that. Now at this point I'm going to come in with the whip finish tool and just take away this thread. For the moment, I'll be coming back to this down the line, so I'll just put that to the side. And what I'm going to come in with next is some 3/0 nano silk again, white, and what I want to do with this is to create the body, and the idea of the heavier silk is to get that taper. Now I could have just maintained using the 30 denier, but what it would have meant is you'd have been sitting there for half the evening waiting on me building a nice taper with that very thin silk. Now what I'm going to do is give my bobbin a a spin slightly anti-clockwise. This is going to flatten out my thread because I want it to be pretty thin at the bottom here, and then as you come up the body it's going to just thicken up, and you can see there already I'm starting to get that cigar shaped taper, and that's good enough. It's just taking a couple of ups and downs with the 3/0, and we're in business. So we'll take that away. Now, where a lot of fly tying goes wrong is with deciding how big the thorax should be, and people will have different opinions on this. Certainly what I like to do, I'll just cast back on my 30 denier nano silk, is I like to have the rule of thirds. Any of you that are into photography, you'll know the rule of thirds, and basically what I want my thorax to be is a third of the length of the total body. So the body's 2/3 of the fly and the thorax is 1/3. That's kind of how I work. Now before I grab the Opal Mirage there, I'm just going to get several extra turns into the body. Then I can grab the Mirage, and the advantage of doing it this way is you can see where your turns are falling, and that can be very helpful when you're trying to get coverage over the shank of your hook. Now I'm holding the Mirage while turning my vise, and it's falling in nicely. Now if you wanted to put a little layer of super glue, if you have any, unlike me, over the body before you brought your opal tinsel off, it might well save you doing the whole UV resin thing, which I'm going to have to do because I haven't got any super glue, as I've made you aware of. So I'm going to coat mine with UV resin, which will protect this opal tinsel. But if you didn't want to do that, and there's reason for it, it'll be you'll get a different look to the fly. When you add UV resin, it does give the fly a certain look, and if you don't, you get the nice shiny Mirage. But you'll see how it'll change. I'm just getting, again, I'm going to get some extra layers in there. So I've got my Flexi Floss here. I'm putting an awful lot of pressure on it at this point. I want it nice and tight as we start to build the rib up the fly. So the first couple of turns, really tight. Now as I come up from a third turn, I'm just easing the pressure on that slightly. The fourth turn's the same. And on the fifth turn, I'm pretty much just bringing the Flexi Floss over as it is. There's hardly any tension. And then once I've got to the front here, I'm going to lock that into place, which is tougher to do than saying it. So I get a couple of turns over the Flexi Floss. I get 2 or 3 turns in front, and then what I'm going to do, just for a bit of belts and braces, because that Flexi Floss is under some tension, is I'm just going to come back and go over it again. Now, I know what you're thinking. That stupid boy's been whittering on about proportions, and look, that body's all the way up to nearly the head of the fly. But don't worry about that. I do kind of know what I'm doing, so bear with me. So I've got the body, and the reason I've come all the way up is so that I've got the option then to go back as far as I want and cover the tag here, for example, or even the first rib. I would consider covering that up once I've put my thorax material on, because that would still give me the rule of third. A third of the fly would still be thorax, and the other 2/3 is the body. So the thorax itself, there's lots of different ways of sticking a thorax in. You can put peacock herl that's been dyed orange, or whatever colours you like. I'm doing an orange fly, It's simple as that. You might be doing a more natural pheasant tail type fly or a duller black fly, but I'm just doing this. As I said, it was a bit of a joke, but I am going to tie a few of these up because I think it's going to work a treat. Now, while I've been wittering on, my thread is naturally fallen flat. So it's got to the point where all the fibres have straightened out. What I want to do is I want to just bring in my bodkin needle and split that thread like so. So you must let me know in the comments section actually. Would you fish this fly, or would you just laugh it out the door if you seen it in somebody's box? So what I'm doing is I'm inserting some orange dubbin. This one's, you can't get a hold of this. This was sent to me many years ago by Andrew Ellis from Andrew's Scruffy Dubbin. He's no longer creating dubbins at the moment, but this was an experimental thing that we were working on, and I just had it in the drawer. I thought it's the brightest orange thing dubbin wise that I've got, so I thought I would use this for this fly. I think it works quite well. So I've now got my little dubbing brush on, and what I'm going to do is come back, and you remember I said to you I'm going to cover up that first rib, which will still give me that third for the thorax. I'm going to bring it forward, and it looks like I've not got enough, but that, believe it or not, is perfect. So although the thorax looks quite small at the moment, once I add in the other feathers that makes this fly up, it will bring me to the head of the fly. So that's looking not too bad. I might just grab my brush and tease out a few more of that dubbin, just to give it that. Once it's wet, I think that'll look amazing. I'm very pleased with this actually. Anyway, sorry, I digress. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to add in some of the mallard that was dyed orange. This one's Troutline do these, and they come in little packs which are excellent for this kind of stuff. So I've got this feather here. I don't want to waste, I've used it for a tip or something, but I don't want to waste it, so I'm going to take some of the fibres off the stem like so, and then what I want to do is just like you would, I suppose, a dabbler. I'm going to bring it all round, completely cloak the hook with the materials. I'll get a pinching loop over the top, and I'll catch that into place 2 or 3 turns. With 30 denier nano silk, you can keep it nice and tidy. So once I've done that, I can come in and remove my waste. So I've now got that mallard under hackle there, if you like. Now for the final hackle, I've got a cock cape that's been dyed orange, and I got this to tie salmon flies with. In fact, a lot of the stuff that I'm using today I got to tie salmon flies, but I find I don't tie them so much, and it's probably because I don't do any salmon fishing. All my fishing's grayling and trout, so I tend to stick to what I know. Although I have tied salmon flies in the past, and they are great fun to tie. Very aesthetically pleasing flies. So I'm just going to take the tip, and once I've got that in place, I can come over with my tiny little 30 denier silk and catch that into place. Now I'm just going to rest that there, and I am going to just add a tiny bit of wax. So I've got this this cock hackle here, and I'm just going to attach my hackle pliers just to give me that little bit extra control. And as I've brought it over there, I'm not happy with how it's sitting for a kickoff, So I'll bring it to the front again, bring it round. What I want to do is encourage the fibres to go back. Now it's a lot more difficult with a cock hackle than it is with hen, but I just didn't have a bright orange hen cape, so unfortunately you're having to make do with the cock hackle here. But when it's done, I think it does add something to the fly. It certainly adds a certain look to the fly. So once I've got that in place, again I'm going to come around and catch that in. Now you'll see fibres strain forward there. I'm not overly worried about that. I'll lick my thumb and forefinger in my left hand. I'm going to pull everything back out the way, and then I'm going to come up onto the feathers, which is going to make the cock hackles lie back. And then once I've done that, I can simply remove the excess, and then I can bring in my whip finish tool and cast that thread off. Now, if you remember back to the fly that was in the vise at the start, you'll see that it had a bright orange head, and the reason I like using such thin nano silk for a fly this size, which I suppose is comparatively big, is the head's tiny now, and I can come in with some Glow Bright number 4. I'm going to start at the eye of the hook, and then I'm just going to create a really bright head. Take away my waste, and then with my whip finish tool I can finish off the fly. Now just to set it off, and you can use super glue, varnish, whatever you have to hand really. I'm going to use some UV resin. Just, I say it all the time, it's instant gratification with UV resin. You know, once you've popped it with your torch and you're happy that everything's right, you can simply put it in your fly box. So what I've got here, actually, if I don't think I've caught much of the UV resin in the eye, but it's always worth, when you've got a big head like this, stick in a bit of wire, and you can see I've picked up some of the resin that's clogging up the eye. You don't want your eye clogged up. There's nothing more frustrating when you're on the bank than having a clogged up eye. As I say, the fly was started off as a bit of a joke, but I'm going to fish it. You let me know whether you would fish it or not. And there we go. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.